Hey, I'm Victoria, aka Floreana, and I'll be reading The Shark Whisperer by Katharine Gammon from Nautilus magazine. In the 1970s, a young filmmaker named Steven Spielberg was researching a new movie based on a novel about sharks. Spielberg sent his art director to his alma mater, California State University, Long Beach. There, he found the office of Donald Nelson, the unflappable biologist, spear fisherman, and shark fanatic who founded the lab. Nelson's office was an art director's dream, filled with maps, scientific papers, nautical charts, shreds of napkins with engineering plans scribbled on them, and various shark repellents. Nelson became the model for the character of Matt Hooper, the charismatic double denim-wearing shark scientist played by Richard Dreyfuss. The movie was the biggest moneymaker in Hollywood history to that point. It also left its mark on the reputation of sharks. The opening lines alone gave a sense that sharks were a nearly demonic force. It lives to kill, a mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave it jaws. Nelson was credited as a science advisor and fully supported the film. But over the next 2 decades, as Nelson's research career took off, he would help to flip the script about sharks, bringing them out of the dark realm of fevered imagination into the clear light of science. By researching shark behavior up close for the first time and making countless documentaries that allowed people on their couches into the underwater world he loved, he began to change people's minds. Sharks are notoriously difficult to study. They're too large to keep in a lab, too difficult to track in the wild, due to their extensive ranges and secretive natures. They live in the murk, tend to shy away from divers, and travel constantly. Nelson and his students wanted to design shark repellents that would deter but not harm the sharks. They tried creating shark tasers, cattle prods that shock the shark if it came too close. But the problem is it also shocked the diver. Another project looked at surfactants, a soap-like substance that could be squirted into the shark's mouth. Nelson's shark repellents never panned out. That Nelson spent years trying to develop shark repellents was paradoxical, because more than any marine biologist, Nelson was dedicated to getting close to sharks, observing them in their natural habitat. Nicknamed Reef by his friends, he was said to be more comfortable in the water than out. He has zero fear of sharks, his widow, Ginger Nelson, told me. Zero. An expert freediver, Nelson was famous for what became known as the kamikaze technique. But after a 1976 brush with a rather pugnacious shark, as Nelson called it, he ended up driving it away with his spear. He realized new techniques would be needed to study sharks up close. He called it the SOS, Shark Observation Submersible. A variation of the SOS is still in use today. A fiberglass contraption, the SOS allowed Nelson to lie on his belly and look out on the underwater world, controlling it with fins and a small motor. But the SOS had limitations. The amount of time Nelson could spend tracking sharks in it was dependent upon the amount of oxygen it could carry in its tanks, and he couldn't learn anything about what sharks did or where they went under cover of darkness, at night, or in the deeper waters of the ocean that the SOS couldn't reach. So Nelson also dreamt up new acoustic transmitter technology that would allow him to track sharks and study them remotely for much longer periods of time. The same technology forms the basis for modern studies of sharks and rays. Transmitters, either attached to the animal or popped inside a fish that would be fed to them, opened up an entirely new world of remote shark research, following them as they moved across hundreds of miles of open ocean. Nelson detailed field studies of large free-ranging shark species, such as gray reef, white tip, blue, angel, leopard, and megamouth sharks. It took him to sites all over the world, including the Gulf of California, Marshall Islands, Polynesia, Australia, and the Bahamas. In study after study, Nelson uncovered evidence that sharks are more complex, intelligent, and social animals, not the solitary, unpredictable killers driven by an insatiable hunger featured in Jaws. In fact, many shark behaviors are extremely predictable, Nelson found. For instance, shark feeding and migratory activity is closely tied to the rising and the setting of the sun. Though it varies somewhat from one species to the next, most sharks travel primarily after dark and feed at dawn and dusk, with some seeming to use the sun as an orientation cue. Nelson and his colleague Richard Johnson studied one species of shark in French Polynesia that is so regular in its daily movements they were able to forecast where the sharks would appear along an established route within a matter of minutes. Nelson also found that many sharks are social and capable of learning. In repeated studies of sensory function, he showed that they were able to habituate to both visual and auditory stimuli and to the presence of humans. A number of species travel in groups, he found, most notably the scalloped hammerhead shark, which forms daytime schools off of several islands and seamounts in the Sea of Cortez. The lemon shark also associates with its own kind, as well as with other species of sharks and rays, and certain species of fish, relationships that were mutually beneficial. The shark offers protection to the fish. Overt aggression, Nelson found, is actually unusual in sharks. Few species engage in chasing or threats, either to other sharks or to humans. Even during active feeding, including infamous feeding frenzies in which multiple sharks vigorously feed together over an extended period in a single area. Sharks seem interested only in getting food, as opposed to competing with one another, and few species exhibit territorial behavior, Nelson reported in his research. Taken as a whole, Nelson's work painted a sympathetic picture of a creature that, like so many other familiar species roaming the earth, defensive when threatened, social by nature, providing ecosystem benefits to other creatures driven by the rhythms of the sun and the seasons. Nelson spent thousands of hours filming sharks between 1968 and 1994. He and his students made 25 documentaries that aired on television or made their way into school classrooms. These shows reached millions of viewers each week, and much of the footage still appears on television today. By the late 90s, it was becoming clear that many shark species were threatened with extinction. An international effort to conserve and protect them had begun to build. Nelson did not live to see the full fruits of his research efforts. In 1997, he was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma. He insisted on continuing to teach and research up to a month before he died. He just did not want to give up, Ginger, his widow says. He absolutely loved what he did. My name is Victoria from Floreana. You can find me on Instagram at Floreana, Floreana, with 3 underscores right after. Hope to see you there. And thanks for listening. Have a good day.